There are moments in life that divide your existence into before and after. Moments where everything you thought you knew about safety, about home, about the sanctity of your own four walls gets shattered in an instant. For me, that moment came on an ordinary Tuesday night when I was 24 years old, standing at the bottom of my basement stairs, locking eyes with a stranger who had been living beneath my feet. I want you to understand something right from the start. This isn't a story about a break-in. This isn't about someone who smashed a window, grabbed what they could, and ran. This is about something far more disturbing. This is about someone who chose my home, learned its rhythms, mapped its darkness, and made it theirs while I slept upstairs, completely unaware. 8 months. I had owned my first house for 8 months. Fresh out of college, decent job, that intoxicating feeling of independence that comes with your first real mortgage payment. The house was perfect for me, a starter home in a quiet neighborhood where nothing ever happened. And the basement, the basement was spacious. The previous owners had done something unusual with it, partitioning the entire underground space into separate rooms using plywood and exposed framing. A main area at the bottom of the stairs, a laundry section tucked to the left, what looked like an abandoned workshop project. And then, in the very back, this strange storage room that seemed to exist for no particular reason. The layout created this maze-like quality that I actually found charming during a home tour. You couldn't see the entire basement from any single vantage point. Each partition created its own little pocket of space, its own shadow, its own hiding place. I remember thinking it was cool, quirky even, like the house had secrets to discover. I had no idea how right I was. I had no idea that those partitions, those blind corners, those shadows were already being used by someone else. Someone who knew that basement far better than I did. The thing that still haunts me, the thing that makes my skin crawl even now, is realizing how long he must have been there. How many nights did I sleep upstairs while he moved through those partitioned rooms below? How many times did I walk past the basement door completely oblivious while he held his breath on the other side? And the worst question of all, the one I can't escape, what was he planning to do? Because when our eyes finally met that night, when I saw him crouching behind that folding table in the dim yellow light of my basement, I knew immediately that this wasn't going to end well. The look on his face wasn't fear. It wasn't surprise. It was calculation. And in that frozen moment, I realized I was standing in a trap I didn't even know existed. It was a weeknight, unremarkable in every way. I had just gotten home from work, microwaved some leftover pasta, watched half an episode of something forgettable on television. The kind of evening that blends into 1,000 other evenings until something tears it apart and makes it unforgettable. I needed to do laundry. It was the only reason I ever really went down to the basement. I had been putting it off for days, but I was running out of clean clothes, and procrastination has its limits. So I gathered up my laundry basket, headed toward the basement door, and opened it without a second thought. The lights were already on down there. I remember pausing at the top of the stairs, basket in hand, staring down at the dim, yellow glow emanating from below. It struck me as odd for maybe half a second. I hadn't been down there in a few days, had I? Maybe I had left them on by accident. Maybe I was just being forgetful. The thought came and went so quickly that I barely registered it as a warning. Looking back, that was my first mistake. That flicker of wrongness, that tiny voice suggesting something wasn't right, I ignored it. I started down the stairs. The basement had this particular smell, musty and cool, the kind of underground scent that clings to unfinished spaces. The lighting was terrible, just those old yellow incandescent bulbs the previous owners had installed. I kept meaning to replace them with something brighter, but I never got around to it. Why bother when I only came down here once a week to do laundry? The stairs creaked under my feet, the familiar groaning of old wood. 13 steps down into the main area, then a left turn toward the laundry section. I had made this walk dozens of times. It was routine, mindless, safe. I reached the bottom of the stairs and started walking toward the laundry area, my mind already elsewhere, probably thinking about what I was going to watch on TV after I got the wash started. That's when everything changed. Movement. just a flicker in my peripheral vision, something shifting in the shadows near the far corner of the basement. My head turned instinctively, following the motion, and that's when my brain tried to process what my eyes were seeing and completely failed. There was a man crouching behind one of the folding tables I had set up near the wall. A stranger, a human being who should not exist in this space. He was partially hidden, his body compressed and tense, but our eyes locked immediately. The recognition was instant and mutual. I saw him, he saw me, and in that moment, the entire foundation of my reality cracked open. I almost dropped the laundry basket. My hands went numb, my fingers losing their grip on the plastic handles. My brain was screaming at me to move, to run, to do something, but my body refused to respond. All I could do was stand there, frozen, staring at this impossible person who was staring back at me. He looked wrong. That's the only way I can describe it. He looked like someone who had been living rough for a long time. His clothes were filthy, his hair matted and wild, his face streaked with grime. But it was his eyes that terrified me most. They weren't panicked. They weren't apologetic. They were cold and assessing, like he was calculating his next move. And then he stood up. The movement was sudden and deliberate. He rose from his crouch behind the table, and I could see his full height now, see the way his body tensed like a coiled spring. But he didn't come toward me. He turned and ran deeper into the basement, disappearing into the partitioned rooms at the back. That snapped me out of my paralysis. The moment he vanished from view, my survival instincts finally kicked in. I started moving backward, my eyes still locked on the spot where he had disappeared, my feet shuffling toward the stairs. I needed to get out. I needed to get upstairs, lock the door, call the police. I needed to. The lights went out. I had never been in my basement with the lights off. Not once in the 8 months I had lived there. I had never had a reason to experience that particular darkness. And when it hit, when every photon of light vanished in an instant, I understood immediately that this wasn't just darkness. This was absolute, suffocating, primordial black. There were no windows in the basement, no cracks of ambient light from outside, no glowing electronics, no emergency exit signs, nothing. The darkness was so complete that I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. I couldn't see the floor beneath my feet. I couldn't see the walls, the ceiling, the stairs that represented my only escape. It was like being buried alive, like the entire world had been erased except for the frantic beating of my own heart. I kept moving backward, or at least I thought I was moving backward. In that absolute darkness, with no visual reference points, my sense of direction immediately began to fail. I knew the stairs were behind me. I had just come down them. They had to be close. But without being able to see, every step felt like it could send me tumbling into nothing. My foot caught on something. I don't know what it was, maybe the edge of the basement floor where it wasn't quite level. Maybe a box I had left sitting out. Maybe nothing at all, except my own panic-fueled clumsiness. But I went down hard, crashing onto the concrete floor with enough force to knock the wind out of my lungs. For a few seconds, I just lay there, gasping, trying to orient myself. But the fall had completely disoriented me. I no longer knew which direction I had been moving. I no longer knew where the stairs were. In the darkness, with my equilibrium shattered, I was utterly lost in my own home. I started to panic. Real, genuine panic that made my chest tighten and my breathing come in short, desperate gasps. My phone was upstairs on the kitchen counter. I couldn't call for help. I couldn't turn on a flashlight. I couldn't do anything except fumble in the dark and hope I found the stairs before. Before what? Before he found me? The thought crystallized in my mind like ice water. He was down here with me, somewhere in this same darkness. And unlike me, he had chosen to kill the lights. He had made this decision deliberately, which meant he knew something I didn't. He knew this basement in the dark. I tried to think logically through the fear. Maybe if I made enough noise, if I seemed crazy or dangerous, he would leave me alone. Maybe he would retreat back into whatever hole he had been hiding in, and I could escape. So I started screaming. Not words, just raw, primal sound meant to fill the darkness and assert my presence, to claim this space as mine and drive out the intruder. But my strategy backfired spectacularly. From the other side of the basement, from somewhere in those partitioned rooms at the back, came an answering scream. It was louder than mine, more aggressive, more threatening. It sounded like violence given voice. It sounded like someone who had nothing to lose, someone who had been living in darkness and shadow and was perfectly comfortable there. I stopped screaming immediately. He stopped a moment later. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the screaming had been. I started moving again, this time using my hands to feel along the floor and the walls, trying to construct a mental map of where I was. My fingers brushed against cardboard boxes, metal shelving, the cold concrete of the basement floor. I moved slowly, deliberately, trying to stay quiet while simultaneously trying to find the stairs. Then I heard it. Movement behind me. Footsteps, careful and measured, somewhere in the darkness. He was following me. He was tracking me by sound, just as I was trying to track the layout of the basement by touch. The sounds got closer. I could hear breathing now, ragged and heavy, coming from somewhere behind me. He was gaining on me. And as I moved through the blackness, feeling my way forward inch by terrifying inch, I couldn't shake the horrible certainty that he knew exactly where he was. He had been down here in the dark before. He had practiced this. He knew every corner, every obstacle, every shortcut. He knew my basement better than I did. My hand finally touched wood. Smooth, finished wood that felt different from the rough plywood partitions. The staircase. I had found it. Relief flooded through me for one brief second before I grabbed the railing and started to climb. I didn't even make it to the second step. Something wrapped around my ankle. Fingers. Strong fingers that gripped with desperate, terrible force. I lost my balance immediately, my hand slipping from the railing. My head struck the wood as I fell, and stars exploded behind my eyes. Then I was sliding backward, being dragged away from the stairs, away from escape. The strength in those hands was inhuman. That's the only way my panic brain could process it. I was being dragged across the concrete floor, pulled away from the stairs with such force that I couldn't find purchase, couldn't stop my own momentum. My hands scrabbled against the floor, my fingers searching desperately for something to grab onto. But there was nothing except smooth, cold concrete. Terror does strange things to the human body. It floods you with adrenaline, sharpens your senses, strips away everything except the raw, animal need to survive. I started kicking, thrashing my legs wildly in the darkness, hoping to connect with something, anything. My heel struck something solid, a leg, a torso, I couldn't tell. But I felt the impact reverberate up through my own body. It was enough. The grip on my ankle loosened for just a fraction of a second. But that was all I needed. I twisted, yanked, pulled with every ounce of strength I had, and somehow, miraculously, my foot slipped free from those grasping fingers. I didn't think. I just moved. I rolled away from where I thought he was, pushed myself up onto my hands and knees, and started crawling frantically in what I desperately hoped was the direction of the stairs. My hands and knees scraped against the concrete. I was probably bleeding, but I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything except the overwhelming need to escape. Behind me, the screaming started again. He was angry now, frustrated that I had gotten away. The sound was visceral and rage-filled, echoing through the basement like the howl of something that had been denied its prey. My hand hit wood again. The staircase. I had found it a second time. This time I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the railing with both hands and started climbing, pulling myself up step by step, my legs pumping beneath me. I couldn't see the stairs, could only feel them under my feet, but I climbed like my life depended on it. Because it did. I counted the steps in my head. 5, 6, 7. Keep going. 8, 9, 10. Almost there. 11, 12, 13. My hand hit the door at the top of the stairs, and I shoved it open with all the force I could muster. Light. Blessed, beautiful light from the kitchen overhead fixture. I burst through the doorway and immediately spun around, slamming the door shut behind me. Only then did I realize the horrible truth. The basement door didn't have a lock. I pressed my full weight against it, my feet planted, my shoulder and back bracing the door closed. My heart was hammering, so hard I thought it might burst. My breath came in ragged gasps. And in that moment of relative safety, I finally had time to process what had just happened. There was a stranger living in my basement. He had been there for who knows how long, hiding in those partitioned rooms, using my home as his own. And when I discovered him, he didn't run away. He turned off the lights and hunted me. The thought had barely formed when I heard footsteps pounding up the basement stairs. He was coming. He was actually coming after me. A split second later, the door exploded inward as he slammed his full body weight against it from the other side. The impact was tremendous. The door flew open several inches, and I felt my feet slide backward on the kitchen floor. I could see into the darkness of the stairway now, could sense rather than see the presence on the other side. With a desperate surge of strength, I threw myself against the door and managed to force it closed again. But he didn't give up. He slammed into the door a second time, then a third. Each impact sent shockwaves through my body. Each collision tested the limits of my strength. I was wearing socks, and my feet kept sliding on the smooth kitchen floor. I reached down and yanked my socks off, desperately needing better traction. Barefoot now, I planted my feet and pushed with everything I had. Slam. Another impact. Slam. Another. He was relentless, throwing himself against the door over and over, and I knew with absolute certainty that I couldn't hold this position forever. Eventually, my strength would give out. Eventually, he would break through. But then, suddenly, the impact stopped. The silence was almost more terrifying than the violence had been. I stood frozen, still pressed against the door, listening. Footsteps. But this time, they were moving away, retreating back down the basement stairs. I heard them descend, heard them fade into the distance, and then nothing. Hook line. I knew I had maybe 30 seconds to act before he found another way to reach me. My phone. I needed my phone. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, maybe 15 feet away from where I stood braced against the basement door. 15 feet that might as well have been a mile, because I couldn't leave this door. If I moved, if I gave him even a second of opportunity, he could burst through, and no, I had to move. I had to take the risk. I made a split-second decision. I pushed away from the door and sprinted across the kitchen, my bare feet slapping against the tile floor. My hand closed around my phone, and I spun immediately, running back to the door. The entire journey took maybe 3 seconds, but those 3 seconds felt like an eternity where anything could happen. I slammed my back against the door again, phone clutched in my hand, and immediately dialed 911. My fingers were shaking so badly I almost couldn't hit the numbers correctly. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Answer. Please answer. 911, what's your emergency? The words came tumbling out of me in a frantic rush. Someone in my basement tried to attack me. Still down there. Please send help. The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional, a stark contrast to my own panic, asking me questions, gathering information, telling me police were on their way. How long until they arrived? 5 minutes? 10? Every second felt like an hour. I stayed pressed against that door, phone to my ear. The dispatcher's voice, the only thing tethering me to sanity. She told me to stay on the line, to stay where I was, to not engage with the intruder, as if I had any intention of going back down there. The wait was excruciating. I strained my ears, listening for any sound from the basement, any indication of what he was doing down there. For several minutes, there was nothing but silence. Then I heard it, movement, but distant, coming from somewhere deeper in the basement. It sounded like he was in the back area, near those storage rooms where he had first run. What was he doing? Was he gathering his things? Was he looking for a weapon? Was he planning his next move? Then I heard a different sound. A scraping noise, metal on metal, followed by a soft thud. It took my brain a moment to process what I was hearing, but when understanding finally dawned, a new wave of fear washed over me. The basement windows. He was escaping through one of the basement windows. I stayed on the line with the dispatcher, relaying what I was hearing. Part of me was relieved. If he was leaving, then the immediate threat was over. But another part of me felt a strange sense of violation. He was escaping. He was going to get away with this. He had been living in my home, hiding in my basement, and now he was just going to slip away into the night. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I heard sirens in the distance. The sound grew louder, closer, until red and blue lights were flashing through my kitchen windows. Car doors slammed. Heavy footsteps approached my front door. The police had arrived. I only left my position against the basement door when I heard the knock at the front entrance and saw the uniformed officers through the window. Even then, I moved cautiously, never taking my eyes off the basement door until I had let the police inside. There were 3 of them, all business, all professional. I gave them a quick rundown of what had happened, and 2 of them immediately moved toward the basement door while the 3rd stayed with me. I watched from the kitchen as they descended into the basement, flashlights cutting through the darkness, calling out that they were police, ordering anyone down there to show themselves. The search took maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. I sat at my kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket one of the officers had given me, staring at nothing and trying to process everything that had just happened. When the officers emerged from the basement, I could tell from their faces what they had found. Or rather, what they hadn't found. He was gone. One of the basement windows had been forced open from the outside. The officers showed me the marks on the frame, the way the latch had been pried loose. That's how he had gotten in probably days or even weeks ago. And that's how he had escaped tonight, slipping out into the darkness while I stood guard over the wrong exit. But the window wasn't the most disturbing part of what the police found. Not even close. The lead officer, a woman named Detective Reyes, asked me to come down to the basement with her. I didn't want to. The thought of descending those stairs again made my stomach turn. But she insisted it was important, that I needed to see something. I followed her down, flanked by another officer, my heart pounding with every step. The lights were on now, harsh and bright, banishing the darkness that had been so terrifying just a short while ago. But somehow, seeing the basement illuminated was almost worse, because now I could see everything clearly. Detective Reyes led me to the back storage area, to the partitioned room where the intruder had first run after I spotted him. The door to this room had been closed when I lived here. I had opened it once when I first moved in, saw that it was full of junk left by the previous owners, and basically ignored it ever since. Now, standing in the doorway and looking inside, I felt my blood run cold. Someone had been living there. Not just hiding there, living there. There was a sleeping bag spread out in the corner, carefully positioned on top of several flattened cardboard boxes for insulation from the cold concrete floor. Next to it was a small collection of personal items, a backpack, some clothes, a few books, a flashlight. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the evidence of long-term habitation. There were food containers, dozens of them, carefully stacked against one wall. Empty water bottles arranged in neat rows. A small camping stove, the kind you might take hiking, set up on a piece of plywood balanced on cinder blocks like a makeshift table. Detective Reyes pointed to the corner of the room where a bucket sat, and I didn't need her to explain what it was for. My stomach churned. "How long do you think he was here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head. "Based on what we're seeing, could be weeks, maybe longer." Weeks. The word echoed in my head. This stranger had been living beneath my feet for weeks, maybe even months. While I slept upstairs, while I watched TV, while I went about my normal life completely unaware, he had been down here, moving through these rooms, listening to me walk around above him. Detective Reyes showed me something else then, something that made the situation even more chilling. On the wall near the sleeping bag, scratched into the plywood with something sharp, were tally marks. Dozens of them, maybe 100 or more. "Counting days, probably," she said. "Or maybe counting how many times you came down here. We can't know for sure." The other officer called out from across the basement. He had found something near the washing machine, tucked behind one of the other partitions. When we walked over, I saw what had caught his attention. More food. But this was different. This wasn't just stored supplies. This was food from my own kitchen. I recognized the box of crackers because I had been looking for it just a few days ago, thinking I had eaten them and forgotten. There was a container of peanut butter, half empty. A box of granola bars with several missing. He had been going upstairs. While I was asleep or at work, he had been creeping up into my kitchen and taking food. The realization made me physically ill. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. When I emerged, Detective Reyes was waiting. "There's something else you should know," she said gently. "When we searched the room, we found evidence that he had been observing you." She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask her to. I didn't want to know the details. I didn't want to think about what observing meant. The violation was already complete. My home, my sanctuary, the place where I was supposed to be safe, it had been invaded in the most fundamental way possible. The police took photos of everything. They bagged evidence. They dusted for fingerprints. They did all the things police do, working methodically and professionally. But I could see in their eyes that they knew what I knew. Whoever this was, he was long gone. He had slipped out that window and disappeared into the night, and the chances of finding him were slim. Detective Reyes explained that this kind of situation, people secretly living in homes without the owner's knowledge, was more common than I might think. There were even cases where squatters had lived in attics or basements for years without being detected. The technical term was frogging, she said, derived from frogs hopping from place to place. But this wasn't just frogging. This was something else. This was aggressive. When I discovered him, he didn't run away. He hunted me. He turned off the lights and tried to catch me in the dark. That suggested something more sinister than simple homelessness or opportunistic squatting. There was nothing stolen? Detective Reyes asked me again. I shook my head. Not that I can tell. I mean, the food, obviously, but nothing valuable. No electronics, no jewelry, nothing like that. She nodded slowly. That supports the theory that he was using your basement as a place to live rather than planning to rob you. But his behavior when you confronted him. She trailed off, but I understood what she wasn't saying. His behavior suggested he was willing to hurt me to protect his secret. The police stayed for hours that night, documenting everything, searching every corner of the basement and the rest of the house to make sure no one else was hiding anywhere. They checked the attic, the crawl spaces, even the cabinets that were technically too small for a person to fit inside. When they finally left, it was nearly 3 a.m, and I was alone in my house with the horrifying knowledge of what had been happening beneath my feet. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat in my living room with every light in the house turned on, a kitchen knife on the coffee table in front of me, jumping at every sound. The house that had felt like home just 12 hours ago now felt like a trap, like walls closing in, like a place that held secrets in every shadow. The next morning, Detective Reyes called me. Her voice had a different quality to it, more serious somehow, more careful. She asked if she could stop by, said there was something she needed to discuss with me in person. When she arrived, she sat across from me at my kitchen table and pulled out a small notebook. "We found something else in the basement," she began. "I didn't mention it last night because we wanted to process it properly and make sure we understood what we were looking at." My stomach dropped. "What did you find?" "Behind the water heater, tucked into a gap in the wall, we found a collection of items. Personal items." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Photos, documents, things that belong to other people." "What do you mean, other people?" "We're still investigating, but it appears this individual may have done this before." The items we found include photos of several different houses, interior shots that look like they were taken secretly. There were also personal documents, bills, letters, things with names and addresses on them. None of them match your address. The implication settled over me like ice water. This wasn't random. This wasn't his first time. He had a pattern, a method. He moved from house to house, living in secret, observing the occupants, taking trophies. "We're running everything through our database," Detective Reyes continued. checking to see if any of these addresses match up with previous reports of break-ins, missing persons, anything unusual. But I wanted you to know because you need to understand how serious this is. You think he's done this before, I said. It wasn't a question. I think it's very likely. And the fact that he kept these items suggests a level of organization, of planning. This wasn't opportunistic. He chose these houses for a reason. What reason? She hesitated. Houses with basements. Houses with partitioned spaces where someone could hide. Houses occupied by single people, preferably young adults, who might not notice small changes or missing food. People who work regular hours and have predictable schedules. Every word she spoke felt like a new violation. He had been watching me before he ever entered my house. He had studied me, learned my patterns, identified me as a target. The randomness I had assumed, the bad luck of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, none of it was true. I had been selected. There's one more thing, Detective Reyes said quietly. Among the items we found was a journal. Most of it is incoherent, rambling thoughts, but there are entries about different houses, different people, including yours. She didn't offer to show me what he had written about me. I didn't ask. Some violations are better left unexamined. Over the next few days, I learned more about the investigation. The police had indeed found connections to several other addresses where similar incidents had been reported. In one case, a college student had reported hearing noises in her basement, but found nothing when she investigated. In another, a young professional had noticed food going missing, but blamed it on his own forgetfulness. None of them had discovered the intruder, and eventually, he had moved on to his next target. I was the first person who had actually seen him. The first person who could describe what he looked like. The first person who had survived a direct confrontation. The police created a sketch based on my description, distributed it to neighboring jurisdictions, added it to databases. But weeks passed with no leads, no arrests, no closure. He had vanished as thoroughly as he had hidden, and I was left with the knowledge that somewhere out there, he was probably doing it again, finding a new house, a new basement, a new victim. I became obsessed with understanding. It wasn't enough to know that he had been there. I needed to know why. Why my house? Why my basement? What had made this particular property attractive to someone who made a practice of living in other people's homes? I started researching the history of my house, diving into property records, talking to neighbors, even contacting the previous owners. What I discovered was both fascinating and disturbing. My house was built in the 1970s by a contractor who had some unusual ideas about basement design. The partitioned layout wasn't random. It had been specifically designed for a large family with teenagers, the idea being that the basement could serve multiple purposes simultaneously. Workshop, laundry, storage, recreation. Each partition created a separate zone. But what I hadn't realized, what I hadn't noticed during my initial home tour, was that the layout created several blind spots. There were angles from which entire sections of the basement were completely hidden from view. The partition design wasn't just quirky, it was perfect for concealment. The previous owners had mentioned during the sale that they rarely used the basement, that it was mostly just storage for them. They were an elderly couple downsizing from a larger home, and the basement had simply been a place to put boxes they didn't have room for upstairs. They had probably gone months at a time without venturing into those back partitions. And before them, I traced the ownership back further. A series of single occupants, mostly young professionals like me, people who bought the house as a starter home and used the basement minimally. The pattern went back decades. This house had always attracted people who wouldn't notice someone hiding in the depths of their basement. Was it possible he had been watching this house for years, waiting for the right occupant, the right opportunity? The thought was almost too disturbing to contemplate, but it made a sick kind of sense. I also discovered something else during my research, something that made my blood run cold. When I pulled the utility records for the house, I noticed something strange. My electricity usage over the past few months had been higher than expected, higher than what the previous owners had averaged during the same season. Not dramatically higher, but enough to be noticeable when I looked at the graphs. Someone had been using electricity in my house. Someone had been down in that basement, using the outlets, charging devices, living a full existence on my utility bill. The evidence had been there all along, in the numbers, in the patterns, but I had never thought to look. I started noticing other things too, now that I was paying attention. Small items that had gone missing over the months. A sweatshirt I thought I had lost, a book I couldn't find, a flashlight that had disappeared from my kitchen drawer. They weren't valuable enough for me to think they had been stolen. I had just assumed I had misplaced them. But now I wondered if they were down in that basement storage room, part of his collection of stolen comforts. The psychological weight of these revelations was crushing. Every assumption I had made about my own memory, my own habits, my own home, all of it was called into question. Had I really forgotten to turn off those lights, or had he been down there? Had I really eaten those crackers, or had he taken them? How much of my own lived experience over the past 8 months had been contaminated by his presence? For months after the incident, I made the decision to move. I couldn't stay in that house. Even after the police had searched every inch, even after I had installed new locks and a security system, even after I had sealed up the basement window and blocked off the storage room, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house itself was tainted. The walls remembered what had happened. The basement still held the echo of his presence. Detective Reyes called me the week before I moved out. They had finally caught him, not in my town, but 3 states away, discovered living in the basement of a rental property by a tenant who had come home early from work. There had been another confrontation, another chase, but this time the police had arrived before he could escape. When they searched him, he had items from multiple houses, including one thing that belonged to me, a photograph that had been sitting on my refrigerator. It was a picture of me at my college graduation, held up by a magnet. I hadn't even noticed it was missing. He was charged with multiple counts of trespassing, burglary, and assault. Detective Reyes told me I might be called to testify if the case went to trial. She also told me something else, something that still haunts me. During his interrogation, he had been asked why he did it, why he chose to live in other people's homes, hidden in their basements, watching them from below. His answer was simple and chilling. Because I could. Because they never looked. Because people don't pay attention to the spaces beneath their feet. He was right. I hadn't paid attention. None of his victims had. We lived our lives on the surface, never thinking about what might be hiding in the depths of our own homes, in the dark corners we avoided, in the rooms we only visited out of necessity. The trial took months to organize, but it never happened. He took a plea deal, accepting a lengthy prison sentence in exchange for providing information about all the houses he had occupied over the years. The list was longer than anyone had anticipated. 17 houses over a span of 8 years. Some he had stayed in for weeks, others for months. And in all that time, I was the only person who had ever seen his face. I moved into an apartment after selling the house. A small place on the 3rd floor of a modern building with no basement, no attic, no hidden spaces where shadows could gather and secrets could hide. I told myself I was starting fresh, leaving the nightmare behind. But nightmares have a way of following you. 6 months after I moved, I received a package in the mail. No return address, just my name and new address written in careful block letters. Inside was a manila envelope, and inside that was a letter from him. He had somehow gotten my new address, had somehow managed to send this from prison. I should have thrown it away without reading it. I should have called Detective Reyes immediately and reported it as harassment. But I didn't. I needed to know. After all these months of questions, I needed answers. The letter was handwritten, surprisingly articulate for someone I had assumed was simply disturbed. He started by apologizing, though the apology felt hollow and performative. He acknowledged what he had done, admitted to living in my basement for 3 months before I discovered him. 3 months. Not weeks, months. But it was the rest of the letter that made my hands shake as I read it. He explained his pattern, his methodology, in clinical detail. He would identify houses with accessible basements, study the occupant schedules, wait for the perfect opportunity to enter. He would set up his living space in the most hidden area, usually a storage room or partition section that the occupants rarely visited. He would learn the sounds of the house, the rhythms of the people above, the exact creaks and groans that signaled someone approaching. And then he would wait. He wrote about the thrill of it, the challenge of existing in someone else's space without being detected. He compared it to a game, a test of patience and observation. He took pride in how long he could remain hidden, how much he could learn about someone's life without them ever knowing he was there. But then his letter took a darker turn. He wrote about me specifically, about the things he had learned during his 3 months beneath my feet. He knew my work schedule down to the minute. He knew what I ate for breakfast, what shows I watched on TV, what time I went to bed each night. He knew about the phone call I had with my mother every Sunday evening, about the friend I played video games with online on Wednesdays, about my habit of working late on Thursdays. He knew everything. And then he wrote the sentence that still makes me wake up in cold sweats. I was planning to stay until the end. I was never going to leave. You were perfect. The implication was clear. The other houses had been temporary, practice, experiments. But my house, my basement, my life, that was supposed to be permanent. He had found what he was looking for, and he had settled in for the long term. But the letter didn't end there. There was one more paragraph, one final revelation that shattered whatever sense of closure I had managed to build. I need you to understand something, he wrote. That night when you found me, when I turned off the lights and we fought in the darkness, I let you in. I could have stopped you on the stairs. I could have kept you in the basement. But I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted to scare you enough that you would never come down there again. I wanted you to be too afraid to investigate, so I could stay. But you were braver than I expected. You fought harder than you should have been able to. And when you escaped, when you called the police, I knew it was over. So I left. But if you had been weaker, if you had given up, I would still be there, living in your basement, watching, waiting. The letter was signed with just his initials. No name, no additional context, nothing else. I reported it to the police immediately. They confirmed that he had sent it from prison, that he would face additional charges for harassment. But the damage was done. The words were in my head now, permanently. I moved again 2 months later, and then again 6 months after that. I've moved 4 times in the past 3 years, always to apartments with no basements, always to buildings with security, always to places where I can see all the spaces around me with a single glance. I still think about that night sometimes, about the moment our eyes locked in the dim, yellow light of my basement. I think about the calculation I saw in his face, the cold assessment of threat and opportunity. And I think about what might have happened if I had been a different person, someone less willing to fight, less willing to survive. The worst part isn't what he did to me. The worst part is what he took from me permanently. The ability to feel safe in my own home, the luxury of not questioning the empty spaces around me, the simple comfort of assuming that when I'm alone, I'm actually alone. Because now I know better. Now I know that the scariest monsters aren't the ones that break down your door in the middle of the night. They're the ones that slip in quietly, that make themselves at home in the spaces you don't look, that watch and wait and learn until they know you better than you know yourself. They're the ones that turn your sanctuary into their hunting ground, and they do it so carefully, so patiently, that you never even know they're there. Until you do. And by then, it might already be too late. I still check my closets before bed. I still investigate every strange sound. I still feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up when I enter a dark room. And sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, I wonder if he was telling the truth in that letter. I wonder if he really did let me win that night in the basement, or if that's just another game, another way to keep me afraid, another method of maintaining control even from behind bars. I'll never know for sure. And maybe that's the real horror, not the certainty of danger, but the permanent uncertainty, the knowledge that some questions don't have answers, and some nightmares don't have endings. They just pause, waiting in the darkness, ready to resume the moment you let your guard down.